Everyone, and welcome to the October 28th edition of the Decaturish.com Twitch show. I'm your host, editor, and publisher Dan Wisenhunt. We have a very special guest today. It is DeKalb County CEO Mike Thurmond. He is the head man in charge of DeKalb County government. He is running for a second term, unopposed, and he'll be on the ballot this November. Mr. Thurmond, how are you today? And thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Dan, and I'm doing well and excited about being here with you in the panel.
Well, thank you so much. Let me introduce that panel real quick. We have my friend Susanna Scott, who's president of the Georgia League of Women Voters. Susanna, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
And we have Decaturish contributor Hans Utz. Hans, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
And we also have Decaturish contributor George Cheedy. George, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
Good. So we wanted to start off, we got a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot going on in DeKalb County. But I think we all had a question about what is going on with the DeKalb Elections Board and to what extent does the county have control over it? Because I know the Elections Board is an independent body, but the county controls some of the funding. But just to recap everyone, before we started, there was an Elections Board meeting this morning. Sam Tillman, who's the chair of that board, did not show up to that meeting. So there's a little drama. It was Sam is supposed to be the nonpartisan member of that board, and he's the chair, but he wasn't there today, so it was 2 Ds and 2 Rs. There's been a lot of concerns regarding communication. I know the county commissioners have basically driven dump trucks of money up to their offices and be like, please take our money so you can run this election. And for whatever reason, the Elections Board hasn't acted too interested in any outside help. So, Mr. Thurmond, from your perspective, what the heck is going on with our Elections Board? Because this election coming up, it's kind of important.
Well, I know basically what is covered and shared through the media. Dan, you spoke correctly. The CEO nor the governing authority has any direct control or oversight or management of the Board of Election. It is an independent body. The county government, the CEO recommends the budget and the county adopts it, but that's the extent of it. It's completely independent, and of course you can advise and you can suggest, plead, beg, curse, but it's up to that board and its employees to conduct elections for DeKalb County.
Are you concerned about the Elections Board right now and what's going on over there?
I'm concerned because, number one, we're in the midst of one of the most important elections in a generation, at least. We're expecting extremely high turnout, and it's already manifesting. And all of this is being conducted in the midst of a novel pandemic. So yes, I'm concerned. Yes, there are questions that have not been answered, but I'm really at a loss as to what, if anything, I can do as CEO except respond when asked to assist.
Well, we certainly understand that, but we do appreciate your perspective on it. If you're just joining us, this is the Decaturish.com Twitch show. We have as our guest today DeKalb County CEO Mike Thurmond. If you want to ask Mr. Thurmond a question, what you need to do is you need to create a Twitch account and give us a follow and get into our chats and ask, and Mr. Thurmond will hopefully have an opportunity to answer those questions. I have a few questions of my own. I know our panelists do. The first question I have is about the New Day Project, and the New Day Project is primarily focused on reforming the problems with billing at DeKalb County Watershed. What have you done so far to reform watershed management and those problems over there, and what is still left to do over at Watershed?
Well, as you know, Dan, because you covered it through over the last decade or so, in January of 2017, when I came in office, we had 37,000 water bills that were being held because the county could not independently verify the accuracy of the bills. And there have been long-standing issues, much frustration and anger from ratepayers and citizens. So the first thing, of course, was to verify those bills, and I'm happy to report that we are now regularly billing our 190,000 plus customers, residential and commercial. We've also replaced, one of the big issues was we had an iPearl, we had about 45,000 iPearl meters. After they were installed, it was discovered that these meters contained a manufacturing defect. And the defect was that if the meter came in contact with moisture, they would give it, and I'm not making this up, huh? They would generate inaccurate readings. And so what we set out, and then we had another 42,000 meters that were beyond their life cycle of 15 years. We had meters that were 40, 50 years old, still in use. As of today, I initiated a settlement with Census, who was the manufacturer of the iPearls, and we ended up selling for about $6 million. And as of today, we've installed 75,000 new water meters. The goal is 106,000 by the first quarter of 2021.
And so what else is left to do as far as reforming Watershed? Is it just the meters, or are there other things that you're working on to resolve some of the customer concerns about what's happened?
A major piece of it is to install a new billing system. We're less than a year away from, we had an obsolete billing system that contributed to many of the inaccurate billings. John Matowski, who's my innovation and IT director, who's a brilliant IT leader. We're on the cusp of now installing a state-of-the-art billing system. And then once we get the new billing system in, once we complete the installation of new meters, and by the way, all of these new meters have transmitters associated with them. So we are eliminating manual meter reading in DeKalb County, which is going to increase the accuracy because the consumption data will be transmitted to an antenna and directly into the billing system.
So if I could ask really quickly, is that so you're not having to send a person to actually physically look at the meter, but is that short transmission, like the truck drives by and it pulls the information from the meter, or is it taking it all the way back to the billing system without even having that truck out on the roads?
Well, we've installed a system of antennas around DeKalb County, and so it's being transmitted to antennas and then to the billing system.
Got it.
So, any other panelists have questions for Mr. Thurmond today? I'm trying to let everybody know we're live.
Yeah. I'm curious at all, Mr. Thurmond, if you're interested in running for the president of the United States of America at this point.
Well, I'm not old enough. That's the problem. Maybe when I get like 70, 80 years old, then I like think about that. Right now, I'm just too young for the job.
In all seriousness, I would like to know, obviously the pandemic blows a giant hole in budgets and in plans and in operations and in capacity. And, it's hard to anticipate how it's going to impact going forward, just because we're still in the throes of it and we're not entirely sure where it's going. But if it's possible, I'm sure we're going to have plenty of conversation about the pandemic in a minute, but if it's possible to set the pandemic aside, what would you say are the top policy and operational priorities over the next year?
Number one is always to maintain fiscal integrity. And one of the things that we did in FY19, moving into 20, is that we anticipated an economic downturn during 2020. And so this year's budget was very lean, no new programs. We did not create any new jobs. And now, to be honest with you, we had no idea it would be a recession fueled by a novel virus called COVID. We had no idea, but having gone through the Great Recession, I just had a feeling that we were in a cycle. We had in mature economic expansion. And so our thinking was that we would enter into a severe economic downturn this year. Consequently, going back to 2017, DeKalb had a series of budget deficits. And as one of the commissioners stated, DeKalb had operated and built a structural deficit that had been in place for several years. My governing philosophy is that if you don't get the money right, you don't have credibility to speak on other issues. And so a government that generates $1.2, $1.3 billion a year, but somehow can't manage a budget with that level of resources is fundamentally flawed. So we eliminated a $24 million deficit. We've had balanced budget since 17, and we built a $112 million fund balance. So we believe that through conservative budgeting and living within our means, and with 112 million in the fund balance, we don't know how long it'll last. Most people are saying another year at best. We feel like we're in a position to, quote, weather this storm.
George, did you have a question for Mr. CEO Thurmond?
I have 1,000 questions.
Well, let's start with one.
Okay. Actually, what do you feel like talking about? Politics, philosophy, or the operations of the government right
You know, I majored in philosophy, so I'm always up for a good philosophical discussion.
now? I do. I want to kind of start with that then. Because, I've been talking to voters like really nonstop for the last 2 weeks. Everybody is freaked out. And it's really basic. Like, I don't recognize my country anymore. Like, the world does not seem recognizable to itself. There are a half a dozen people in DeKalb County, in Metro Atlanta, that have the standing to speak to, like, sort of the big ticket questions about how we get together as a community, as a society. At this point, you're one of them. My apologies, my sympathy to you, but you are one of them. Like, a lot of people in a Biden administration are going to be looking at folks like you to try to figure out how to get to what passed for normal before all of this. Like, what are you going to tell them?
Well, I think DeKalb is the perfect laboratory to experiment in terms of democratic government and to create strategies and solutions and consensus that will be net positive for citizens. Look at us demographically, extremely diverse, not just in terms of race and religion, but also in socioeconomics. So if we can create strategies, programs, solutions that can impact in a positive way, then I think what people are looking for right now, believe it or not, is that they're looking for solutions. And with one of the things with COVID, it creates so much anxiety. So for leaders in particular, one of the things I've tried to do is to calm myself in the midst of the chaos, because people are dependent on you and I to do what's best for our community. So, with a background having, studied philosophy and grew up in a very rural area where we were the only family, where I grew up now is a nature center in Clark County. It's called the Sandy Creek Nature Center. I live in it. So I've learned to seek some balance in myself. When the storms are raging, that's the time you need to really calm yourself and think clearly and try to develop solutions to the problems that we face.
I've had a hard time with that lately. I'm not going to lie.
Really?
I'm arguing with people in ways that I shouldn't, that I know I shouldn't.
Yeah, but people are frustrated. And we had one of the CARES Act strategies, we invested in the Community Service Board. I read that, and depending on the study, I've seen 50%, and I've seen up to 90% of the population is having some type of emotional, psychological episode growing out of this pandemic. Some are more severe than others. So when you engage in a citizen or anyone, you have to factor in that he or she is responding, young and old, to the current crisis at some level. And when you factor that in, you take into consideration some of the things they may be saying or doing, quite frankly, is growing out of trauma as opposed to any real intent.
Yeah.
Funny you bring that up. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing, and I'll get out of your face.
Yeah.
Because I was attending the Community Service Board meetings regularly for a couple of years, and I haven't recently because I'm slacking off, but set that aside. The city of Atlanta just got $20 million in CARES Act money dropped on it in order to alleviate homelessness. I've got to call out to Ann Pope to try to figure out what's going on with DeKalb, but I'm assuming DeKalb's got some money looking at homelessness as well. Like, I don't know if it's 20 million bucks, but it's not going to be nothing. Like, the problem is you will have a lot of money and not necessarily the landlords willing to take the money. Even now, like, I'm concerned that landlords are going to blow off. No, I don't want those guys. Yeah, I don't like their credit profile. No, I don't like their eviction history. I don't want them. And then we're going to end up with a significant increase in homelessness while there's money in a bank account to fix it. Um, I'm wondering what the high level conversations have been like about that specific issue, like, or in general, like about homelessness and what's coming, like in your office.
Well, Alan Mitchell in community development, one of the things we've done through the CARES Act money is that we've housed nearly between 60 and 70 homeless individuals at a location in a hotel in DeKalb County that
Yep,
we didn't publicize. And
I know the one.
when you're thinking about transmission and infections, the theory is that these are populations that are exposed, and consequently, we've done a great job working with some of the cities of getting homeless populations into substantive, safe, secure shelter, and we've done it. And we didn't make, to be honest with you, we didn't make a big issue out of it because there might be people who would be opposed to it. But there were some hotel owners who accommodated us. And not only did we provide the shelter, but counseling and food. It was a unique moment. What I'm interested in, and I've asked Alan, is how many people did we rescue, from homelessness as a result of this? If all of a sudden you're no longer sleeping under a bridge, and could we intervene in a way that has some long-term positive effects on a person's life? But we'll have to wait and see. But that's what we've done so far.
Got it.
I'm really glad, Mr. Thurmond, that you talked about the way people are responding to trauma and how they're acting out in ways that are not normal. And I noticed this a lot because we have a lot of comments, both on our Facebook page and our Twitter page and our Decaturish, Facebook page and the website. And I'm in a publishers group, and I actually published something the other day on that forum, and I was like, listen, there's going to be a lot of anger directed at you personally over the next few weeks as we get close to this election because people are wound up tight, and you're more likely to respond to that anger than the people they're really angry at. And so you kind of have to ignore it, and that's hard because it feels personal. I will say, George, I have made a concerted effort to get the hell off Facebook, and I haven't regretted that. I've felt 10 times better not engaging there. It's not a place where constructive conversations happen. So if you are just
like very specifically, it's designed
Right.
to degenerate conversations
Right.
to create eyeballs and traction. Like it's meant to foment that the exact opposite of I think what we need right now as a community and a nation.
So don't use Facebook. Just come on our Twitch show. That's what you should do. So if you're just joining us, this is the Decaturish.com Twitch show. We are with County CEO Mike Thurmond, and we have a reader question. So let's get to that. The question from Clarence is, since the County Commission voted for the exchange of 40 acres of forested parkland that will be cut down in exchange with Black Hall Studios for their 53 acres, do you believe that any existing park owned by DeKalb County can be exchanged with a private developer for economic development?
No.
So what's your opinion of what happened? Because this has been a controversial thing. It's a land swap that has happened between Black Hall Studios and the county. It was approved. It wasn't unanimous. It's been controversial. It's been going on for a long time. What's your opinion of that specific situation?
It's an amazing, watching it externally, it's an amazing confluence of beliefs, hopes, dreams, ideologies, political philosophies. You have individuals who are really focused and have committed really their lives to protecting and preserving the natural environment, and juxtaposed for citizens. And then you have a studio, and then you have citizens who live in and around that studio who've been starving for jobs and economic growth and economic opportunity. And so that's where the conflict is. And it's been really amazing to watch it unfold. And it's interesting. And it has a socioeconomic component, it's a racial component. But at the end of the day, it's one of those issues where there's no absolute right or wrong. There's no 100% solution. And ultimately the county commissioners with the recommendation from the administration had to made a decision. And that decision was, and it ties to, and we'll get to the sewer system, but that park is located in a portion of DeKalb County that's been divested by the county in terms of investment for infrastructure, that's lacking in economic growth and opportunity, high crime rates, all the pathologies, and the people in that community are desperate for something that somehow will improve the quality of life. At the same time, you have the environmentalists who want to protect the very beautiful and unique natural resources there. So decisions had to be made, and everybody was going to walk away not totally happy, I think.
So we haven't heard from Susanna Scott. Susanna, what questions do you have for Mr. CEO Mike Thurmond?
Well, coming from the League of Women Voters, I'm going to bring us back to elections briefly because I think we're all hyper concerned or hyper aware that there's an election coming. Because I live in DeKalb County, I have been attending all of the Board of Elections meetings, and I've also started attending the ops meetings because there's been a lot of discussion about how the county can support the elections office leading into the election. And one thing that came up in today's meeting was the fact that one of the things I think that several of the board members have been saying repeatedly for months is we need more staff. We need staff desperately because there aren't enough people to do the work that needs to be done in an efficient manner. And one of the things that the director said today was that by adding on staff, they don't have office space to accommodate them right now. And I know that the site that they're at on Memorial Drive, that building is ancient. I know that it's had lots and lots of infrastructure issues just with that building. So it got me wondering, what are the county's plans for that location and finding office space for both the tax commission, the extension services, voter registration and elections? Is there something that the county can do, or new locations that can be found that are as convenient so that they can expand as they need to, and also so that the working conditions and the environment of the building they're in is actually safe and harmonious?
No, great questions. And thank you for your leadership of one of the preeminent voter education organizations in our state. I wish, I can't tell you, with all the issues I have on my plate, I wish somehow I had, quote, the authority or the opportunity to, quote, reform our registration and election system. I just don't have it. And right. And I have to make peace with it because that's the way the charter is written. And I want to go back to an earlier question. If 3 members of the Board of Registration and Election wanted to change the leadership, they could. So apparently there's not 3 votes there.
I'm not sure if that's entirely true, but we're also a week away from an election.
I mean, but I'm just saying, I'm not suggesting that it be done now, but I'm just saying previous to now, or even after the election, if that's what a majority of the board wanted, they could do it. I mean, it just,
yeah.
I'm speaking the obvious.
Right.
Right. So apparently that's not the direction the board wants to take. So now we're in a position is that we have to accept that decision and do everything we can independent of that to support that decision. And you made a good point that we reached the point where we crossed the Rubicon and it was no going back, right? Yeah. Once the election started, what can you do? But I think hopefully DeKalb County, once we get through this election season, and that may not be the January, right? But we need to really step back and take a real, and I like what Hans said before we came on the air. To me, I like to understand the depth and the scope of the problem. I just don't know what it is because I'm on the outside looking in. Right. So, and oftentimes we confuse the symptom of a problem with the problem. And we do that all the time in government. And I'll call a press conference and make this pontification about a symptom, but never ever really get to the problem. And consequently, it metastasizes and festers for years and years and years. What we need to do in DeKalb County after this election, because there's some real questions that need to be answered. There are some fears, some concerns that need to be addressed. And so we need to step back, look at the current voter registration and election system, look at where it's housed, whether we need a new location, and then think about the future. Look, we got a grant for what? Almost
$5 million.
Yeah,
$5.8 million. Money is not the problem.
it is not.
Whatever the problem is, it's not money. It may be how we manage it. It may be lack of vision. It may be lack of consensus. I don't know, but it's not money.
Well, there are definitely reforms to our elections that should be implemented statewide and nationally as well. So let's not put all the problems on the DeKalb County Elections Board's shoulders by any means. But we do have a couple of reader questions, Mr. Thurmond. The question is, billing software for watershed implementation was mentioned. She said that it was supposed to be done this fall, but she's asking if that has been delayed. Do you?
Well, slightly. 80% of the employees are working remotely in DeKalb right now, and everything is slowed down. So the last estimation that I saw would be second or third quarter 21.
Gotcha. So it's been delayed to 2021.
Yeah.
It's also important to note, right? So billing systems, I think people underestimate the complexity of billing systems sometimes. And it's important to note that speeding that along could actually make it worse if it's, like there is a series of steps that have to be done methodologically in order to implement it in a way that doesn't actually disrupt and make it worse. And so I'm unsurprised with the pandemic and folks working from home and not being able to be together with the systems that it takes a little bit longer.
No, absolutely. And it's not just the billing system. We're going to use this to transform the culture of the DeKalb government writ large. It'll be transforming, particularly say roads and drainage that people don't really think about, and sanitation, and all of these forward-facing planning and development, forward-facing departments will be fundamentally changed down to pothole repairs. We'll be able to track it and communicate it to constituents in a way we just hadn't been able to historically. So I'm just telling you, it's going to be well worth the wait. It's going to exponentially improve transparency and the ability to communicate with the constituents that we have around the county.
And she had a follow. Oh, George, do you want to add to that?
No, go ahead. Follow up first.
Okay. Follow-up question was: should residents expect rate hikes to cover the new loan for the decree? I assume they mean the consent decree. Can you answer that?
That was my question.
Okay.
Well, not until the people who are presently consuming the water and using the sewer system, until all of us are paying our fair share. 2 weeks ago, we had a presentation. I hired an auditing firm to look at all the commercial accounts. We have about 30,000 commercial accounts. And after less than 30 days of investigation and analysis, they confirmed about $8 million a year in water usage that was not being captured by the county. That large commercial users, primarily apartment complexes, we found where someone or somehow they have been bypassed, the water meters have been bypassed. So you had maybe an apartment complex that were charging residents on their rent for water, but then not the consumption was not being registered, and consequently the owners of the complex were not paying the county. So just in first 30 days, we found $8 million annually that should be collected by the system. So my position has been from day one. And when I first came, I'm just telling you, it's been, I know at least 4 times I've been asked to consider a rate hike, but not until everyone is paying their fair share. And then we'll determine how much or when we raise the rates to pay for the long delayed repair and replacement of our aging system.
What's that annually note? Do you know what that is? What that amount is? For the repairs. Yeah.
Oh, well, the total package is probably north of $1.5 billion. The loan we received this week, the $253 million or so, the first 5 years, and the interest is average about $350,000 a year for the first 5 years. And of course, after that, it's expensive. Let me tell you, the thing that we're paying.
I mean, it's well covered by $8 million of annual fees missed, right?
Exactly. At least the first 5 years. So what you got is that if you're not collecting what's already being consumed, I'm not going to raise the rates on people who've been playing by the rules and doing what they should do, and allow other people who skirting the rules to continue not to pay their fair share. Once that's done, and if we need additional money, then I'll be the one that have to recommend the rate increase. But I want to be able to tell the ratepayers that we've done our due diligence and we've taken the step to ensure that people aren't gaming the system.
I'm still trying to figure out how DeKalb County didn't end up with a 9-figure fine from the federal government. Like, I can't believe we skated out of that with, like, what was it, $1 million fine? Like something crazy. Like, I was expecting like $80 million, something
Really?
crazy like that.
Well, I can tell you, Joe, I can tell you, I think now, I can't speak for the EPA and EPD, but I can tell you what we presented. What we showed through evidence is the investments and the work and the progress that have been made since 2017, that things are different. Now, we're a long way from fixing the system. And I'm sitting here nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof because I know we're getting ready to get 4 inches of rain. Some people sleep well at night when it's raining. I don't sleep a wink. I just tell you, because I know what's coming in some of the areas where we've had repeat spills. But what that's relatively, and I call it, if $1 million is not much, the relatively small fine is that we prove that we honestly and consistently have tried to do better and made investment and we've cleaned trunk line, sewer lines that haven't been cleaned in 50 years. We cleared easement. We've done point repairs, like on Melanie Court, and done some work on Green Street. So that's what made the difference. People saw that. You see, in life, you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to prove to people that you're trying to do better. And that was a low bar for me, by the way, come to think of.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a statement. We were like, that's a good point. Follow-up question on this topic, and then we're going to move on. How long is the disconnect moratorium staying in place?
Well, that's next. So what I've asked internally my people to do is to prove to me and ultimately to the commissioners and ultimately to the people of DeKalb County that we are running a system that is within industry standards, that has an accuracy rate that falls within industry standards. Because see, that's why the moratorium was put in place, because the system, we couldn't verify accuracy. So once we bring forward substantive evidence, independent evidence that we are running this system in a way that meets industry standards, I'm going to ask the commissioners to lift the moratorium.
Gotcha. If you're just joining us, our guest today is DeKalb County CEO Mike Thurmond. We'll have him for another 30 minutes. If you have a question, create a Twitch account, give us a follow, and jump into our chats and ask him. Mr. Thurmond's here. He's here for 30 more minutes. He'd be happy to answer your questions. I have one. In the past, there has been talk of changing the county's form of government to replace the CEO with a county manager. That talk has died down during your term. Do you know if that's still being considered, and what's your opinion of that idea?
Can I add to that question, Dan? Because that was literally my next my next question as well. I mean, so I think you're on the record saying it's like 10% of your job is political, but 90% is actually, managing operations and handling 6,000 employees. And you're running unopposed right now, so I think you can afford that. In the circumstances where there maybe isn't quite as much of a tolerance, I'll just say it. I think generally the county thinks you're doing a good job. But for individuals who are in that role that maybe are a little bit more challenged in execution, it's not 90-10, right? Like that balance shifts a little bit. You're fundraising and you're having to spend a lot of time not just focused on the 6,000 employees. So with that context, obviously you're kind of the exception to the rule, but with the typical situation, I'd be very curious about your perspective.
Well, first, I signed an executive order creating a charter review commission. We suspended that COVID again, but hopefully we'll pick it up early next year. Well, we're looking at all aspects of the charter and the government, not just the CEO's office. One of the challenges with the CEO's position is that we weren't following the charter, to be honest with you. And so one of the things I've tried to emphasize and work towards is to actually follow the charter as written. And the only thing that's really unique about the CEO position is the title CEO. Atlanta has a strong executive form of government. Most cities do have strong executives. So, but there's only one CEO. So if we change the title to whatever, to county manager, whatever, people wouldn't think twice about it. So it's not really the form of government. You worked in the city of Atlanta. Atlanta has a strong mayor, which is what DeKalb has, a strong executive government.
But the difference being, so this is my experience having worked with and around two administrations. The mayor's role, Mayor Franklin was a former COO, so she was the former operations director for the entire city. So she came at the mayor's office from having been the one that all of the departments actually reported up to. And Mayor Reed came in as a legislator, but from the state house. And so senator, I guess, I made sure I give him his proper title. But the method that they executed on in office was fundamentally political, right? They had a city manager, the chief operating officer of the city, that actually takes the reporting of all the departments with the exception of public safety, police, fire, and corrections at the time. All of the other departments report up through the chief operating officer, and the bulk of the operations are actually managed through that office. And the mayor's role, both mayors, viewed their role and executed their role as fundamentally politically clearing the plate so that their operations manager, their chief operating officer, could actually run the city effectively. And so it is a little different in the sense that that chief operating officer role, the true county manager, is you, as well as the political role is you. And so I do understand people asking the question whether there's conflict there.
Well, but I have a COO too, the position that you were a deputy. Zach Williams is my COO. I guess the bigger piece is looking back now over the last 4 years, these problems have become so immense in DeKalb County that DeKalb almost became ungovernable. A year and a half to figure out why the heck are people getting $50 million water bills. You had that. You had a sewer system that had not been properly maintained for 50 years. You had a budget deficit. You had a north-south divide where, that was extremely toxic. You had streets because the DeKalb didn't have the revenue that was deteriorating. And I can go on and on and on and on and on. I think now whoever succeeds me, they'll have an opportunity to have a more realistic chance to be successful in the job. Now, personally, I like to fix stuff. It's perfect. And, I don't much like politics. I'll be honest with you. I'm not that good a politician, truth be told. But I do enjoy transforming public and private entities, particularly public ones, to try to make them more accountable and help them to provide the services and to operate at higher levels of efficiency. That's just who I am. That's what I like to do. My sanitation department, I'm having the time of my life getting the ASLs, the automated side loaders, working. Today, we were distributing over the next 8 weeks 95-gallon roll carts. We are replacing the 65-gallon. I am so excited, right? Because if you all notice something about DeKalb, those 65-gallon roll carts, they always overfilling and flowing out, and just, the raccoons love it, but it's
Yep.
just horrible for our neighbors, right? So we're distributing 43,000 of them. It's going to help make this automated side loaders more efficient, because my drivers won't have to get out of the vehicle and load the extra bags into the truck. So that's just a big deal to me. I don't know how big a deal it is to normal people, but that to me is how government becomes more efficient and effective and deliver a more professional service. But like you're right, huh? You got to be in it at that level, and that may not be where most people are. But I don't have much of a life anyway, so that's kind of what I do. That's kind of where I live.
Yeah.
George, have you seen the new 95-gallon roll carts?
So I haven't. I'm looking forward to it because I fill mine up every week.
Isn't that aggravating to have it flowing out and then having the bags by the side? And
it sucks. I'll be glad to see it. You're all shucksing right now about I'm not really that great a politician. That's a lie. You actually are probably one of the most successful politicians in DeKalb County in the last 20 years.
I mean, he's running unopposed for a second term as CEO. I don't know if anybody has any history when the last time that happened was, but I would like to look that up someday.
I think that's a function.
Nobody considered me for vice president this year.
Oh, but I got to tell you, like that's actually a question
of the fact that you like to solve problems.
If I'm so good, then why?
Just to be clear, like you were on a lot of short lists to run for the Senate this year. I'm surprised you didn't. Like I was betting money that you were going to run. But here's the thing. Like I'm expecting a Biden administration to pick you up. Just to be perfectly frank about it.
This kind of politics doesn't really appeal to the professionals. I'm just telling you. And you say it's all shucks, but I tell my wife that sometimes time just passes you by, and it's extreme partisanship and it's anger. That's just not who I am. Let's make DeKalb better. It's like SPLOS. People say, "Oh, you'll never get the cities." George, you were there. You on city council. You remember the tension between cities and counties in DeKalb. You remember how bad that was?
It was worse now than it is now. It's still there. I mean, I still see it, but it's not nearly as bad as it was.
Yeah, that's a decade's change, though.
SPLOS.
Yeah.
Right? It wouldn't have passed if we didn't get it. So now, collectively, we got $600 million to fix the streets, the roads, and do the infrastructure, the fire halls and stuff. So to me, that's what it's about, but that doesn't sell. I'm just telling y'all, that's not what sells, at least at the current state of affairs in the way people do politics. I don't mind, I know it's a choice.
I would question whether I hear you at a national level. You're probably right? Like a senator or certainly a presidential level. But if you look where some of the most effective operators are, they're in governor houses and they're in the state houses and they're running the states. I mean, this is part of the reason why you see generally a more centrist set of individuals, regardless of party, in the state house, because at the end of the day, you got to get the work done. Now, obviously, notwithstanding certain states that maybe have changed for the worse recently, but in general, you see where you have to get stuff done, people like yourself who are able to put their heads down and get stuff done.
Well, I agree. But I'm happy, because if I was out running for the Senate right now, we wouldn't have not have gotten the $253 million to go out and fix the sewer system for DeKalb County. I thought about that. So, I'm a man of faith as much, I don't wear it on my sleeve, but your steps are ordered and you end up where you're supposed to be in life.
Susanna, do you want to jump in? I know you've been...
Yeah. So, I wanted to pick up on something you said a few minutes ago about the north-south divide. I grew up in South DeKalb, Flat Shoals Road. And growing up, we always heard concerns about how money was spent in the South DeKalb versus North DeKalb. And I hear that from North side as well. And I'm just wondering, for the next 4 years, and making sure we're making these infrastructure changes that your administration is going to be taking care of in the next 4 years, how do you address those concerns about the fairness and the equity of the distribution of funds and making sure that both halves of the county actually feel like they're being adequately taken care of?
Well, through SPLOS, and we're paving streets that need to be paved, right? Based on an analysis, you go out and which street needs it most. And so we're doing streets in north, east, and west, and no complaints so far. The issue with the sewer lines, the Snap Finger Basin, where 90% of the sanitary sewer SSOs occur, is in Central and South DeKalb, right? And it's the oldest part of our system, and it's the one that's been most neglected. So consequently, these people who live there are suffering under this continual flow of sanitary sewer overflow. That's an example that people aren't crazy. Yes, sometimes that's what happens in a democracy. If you're not at the table, or if there are laws that prevent you from getting to the table, then quite frankly, you won't get much from that table.
Right.
And it's true in DeKalb, it's true in America, it's true all over the world. But no, and I want to go back to, I love this conversation. I wanted to share this. It's something Joy said about, I could have gotten elected in 2016 and without ever traveling north of Highway 78. I know the numbers, right? I do have a few political skills. I'll admit that. I do, there's a little bit of shucks in there too. Yeah, I'll accept that. But you can win, but can you govern? In order to govern, you have to build coalitions and you have to build consensus. And so one of the things, and I was thinking about governing, I wanted to solve some of these seemingly intractable problems that we had in DeKalb County. And in order to do that, I had to go and address people who, quite frankly, I could have won without, but I could not have governed without them. And that's the difference.
So how do we get that mindset to other government official or, elected officials? Because I think that is the right mindset to have.
Starting with, how do we institutionalize that into the CEO role so that the people that follow you at least follow that template? I didn't mean to talk over you, Susan. And I'm really sorry, but that's a super great point.
Yeah. We need statesmen who care about the actual work of government. And what can you do to help build that infrastructure within our political system here in DeKalb?
Well, success, people model success. And so I would hope that if we are successful, when I get my pictures off the wall and walk out the door, that someone will say, all right, this is really how to win, and not only how to win, but also be successful. Because, when I started as superintendent, I never will forget, I was invited to the Dunwoody Swim and Tennis Club. They were having something. Is that what it's called? Dunwoody?
So.
That's it.
Something like that.
That's it, right? And my staff there at the school district said, you going? I said, yeah, they invited me. It's on Sunday afternoon, nothing, not football season. So they said, all right, how many security do you want to take with you? I'm like, wait a minute. 15-minute drive from my house, right? I wasn't going to China. You get up there and they were asking basically the same parents asking the same question about their children that the people on the South Side ask, right? And one of the things I learned sitting out there in the superintendent's office, I could see our welcome center. And I would drive by and it would be parents with all type of native garb on from all over the world. Cause we DeKalb, right? And they all would have the same look on their face, holding their children, this expectation, this hope, these dreams, and it's transcendent. And so that helped me to understand that people are people. We differ because, we got different socioeconomic background, but at the end of the day, we just folk. Parents want a good education for their child. Dan wants his son to get a good education so he can grow up and be somebody famous and good and be a good person. And the same is true for every parent that ever lived, all basic good parents. So that's the way I approach it. It's kind of silly and stupid, but I'm old. I'm older than you all. And hell, I've lost races. See, the other thing is once you lose, it makes you a better politician. It makes you a better leader. People in Georgia, people in DeKalb don't know. My first 2 races, I lost for state representative. I finally got elected. I ran for the U.S. Congress, and Cynthia McKinney beat me. And then I was a DFACS director. Then I ran for labor commissioner. Then I ran for U.S. Senate and got beat, right? And then I ended up in DeKalb. But see, the point is, life goes on.
So on the subject of governing, I'm glad this came up. So there is a not 0% chance that after this election there will be no more Republicans on the county commission. Nancy Jester's in a really tough race, and I really should have Nancy on the show. She's a public servant, and she's always willing to answer questions, but she is in a tough race. So let's say after November there are no more Republicans on the county commission. What does that mean for the future of DeKalb County government? You're not going to have that level of dissent coming from North DeKalb that you once had, potentially.
Well, there'll be dissent. It always trust me. And oftentimes, most of the dissent doesn't come from extreme North DeKalb. There'll be dissent and disagreements and different opinions. It always is, and that won't change. And there'll be more progressive opinions, and there'll be more conservative ones, and so it is. And it's just like there are no Republicans there in the House delegation, right, from DeKalb, and the Senate. Now and then you cover the state house. How much consensus do you get down there under the gold dome?
Well, now that Vernon Jones is gone, I don't know how that's going to go, but they might.
Well, he could be the Republican now. Now Vernon is the Republican.
Yeah. Now
we're not really sure what he is
today,
at the moment. Like that's a little confusing.
Vernon's a pro troll. That's what he's doing. He's just trolling everybody for a living, and you can make a good living doing that. Honestly, but yeah, Vernon, he was always the wild card at the legislative delegation, and now that he's gone, I mean, I'm sure there'll be dissent, but I don't know if there will be that kind of dissent.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Vernon's a smart guy, though. People don't underestimate. He's a smart guy.
I never said the man wasn't smart. I know he's smart. He's
smart.
He's just, he's one of those people. He just likes stirring stuff up. I get it. I like stirring stuff up sometimes too. It's a tendency. So you are term limited, so you're not going to be able to run again. If you're not going to tell us who you would like to see replace you as CEO, what qualities would you like to see in that person? Now, if you want to tell us, make some news, go for it. But if not, what qualities would you like to see?
I think Hans spoke to it. You have to recognize the CEO, it is unique. You do have a job, and the job is not necessarily kissing babies and shaking hands. You have to show up every day, focused and intent on running the government. And that's what makes this job so unique. That's why I love it and enjoy it. But anyone who's seeking political opportunity by being the CEO of DeKalb, it's just not going to work for you. This is not the job you want if you just want to be a politician. There's nothing wrong with being a politician. This is a job, a full-time job. I tell people now, being superintendent was just fun. That was the most fun job I've ever had, right? It was like I got a chance to go back to high school because I could go to band practice and I go to football practice, and it was just amazing to be around 100,000 children. But being CEO is a job. I'm just telling you. And so whoever in the public needs to select a person who has those executive level skill sets in order to ensure the proper operation of the government, whoever he or she might be.
So we do have a comment that said, I want to compliment the DeKalb County Department of Public Health for making COVID-19 testing readily available. I know you do a lot of work with the Department of Public Health here in DeKalb County. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship and how you've been able to work together on some of these issues?
Oh, man. Dr. Elizabeth Ford is the best health director, not just in Georgia, but anywhere in this country. She's an amazing lady, and she's led the effort in responding to COVID-19. We appropriated $10 million or so from CARES Act to increase testing in DeKalb. And one of the things, Dan, look at the state statistics. DeKalb is faring much better in terms of infection rates and death, more so than any other county in Metro, and one of the most, relatively speaking, successful in the state. But it's because of her leadership and others, and I love working with her. And right now we're focused on getting flu vaccines. If you hadn't gotten your flu shot, Susanna and Hans and George, get your flu
I got
shot.
mine. I got
You
mine.
got yours? Everybody good? Uh-oh.
No, I need to go get it. I feel terrible.
I had the flu once, and I said I'm never doing this again. That
Yeah,
was once was enough.
yeah, I love our board of health. They are doing a great job.
I will say on the
I would.
testing sites, I do have one critique. Um, there used to be a testing site pretty close. There was one in Tucker, and I know that there are contracts and other things that go into that the health board has no control over. But the closest one to me, and I've had a test done 2 or 3 times now, is Piney Grove. Nothing wrong with Piney Grove. It's a lovely little church. They're always very nice. Nice drive. But I do wish, and I do think that more people would get tested if there were just a couple more sites that were a little more centrally located here in this part of DeKalb. And I don't know, I mean, maybe they've looked into that and they haven't been able to get a contract. I don't know what all the negotiations have been. But that is my one critique. But otherwise, I agree. Definitely been easy to go and get tested. And Hans, you had something you wanted to say as well?
Well, I mean, I was gonna comment on. I'll be 100% honest, Mr. Thurmond. I was surprised at the beginning of the pandemic. You hear the horror stories about how it's chaos in all these different locations, and I from the very beginning, I think I had my first test in early April. I mean, easy to register online, not a lot of wait when you showed up. Turnaround on the results was quite quick, and in fact, I did notice a slight drop off when the state took over things, and then I think DeKalb, pulled back up and basically, I don't know. I'm guessing behind the scenes, the folks in DeKalb told the state, "No, we're gonna do it the right way." It was working before.
Now, runs her shop now. Let me just say that she runs her shop, and thank you for observing and acknowledging that she did take control of testing in DeKalb.
Yeah.
So what are the
Hans
plans?
had COVID.
I did
Hans
have
did
COVID.
have
Hans was
COVID.
sick.
So I've had that javelin stuck into the back of my skull way more times than I had ever wanted to. But yeah, so healthy now, all good. But I've definitely plenty of experience with the DeKalb testing regime.
I'll pass your comments on to Dr. Ford.
So what are the
Yeah.
plans for the county's going to have a bicentennial celebration coming up in your second term, I believe.
No, 2022.
So what are the plans? What has DeKalb got in store for the bicentennial?
Here I go. I love it. It's been a little bit held in abeyance, but the thing that we're working on right now is a updated history of DeKalb County to celebrate our bicentennial. And we have a great storyline group. They're working on it. The research is being done. And we'll be announcing probably at the beginning of this year, a bicentennial commission at the beginning of 2021 that will plan the activities for 2022. So
If you're building a history of this county, I want in on that. Like, I want to help. Yes, please.
All right. Done.
Thank you.
There we go, making history right now. Everybody, this is CEO Mike Thurmond. It is 7 o'clock. I do want to be respectful of Mr. Thurmond's time. I wanted to thank our guests for joining us. I wanted to thank Mr. Thurmond for his public service and acknowledge that it is a unique thing to have a race that's as high profile as the CEO's office go uncontested, especially when we have contested elections happening all around us. So I do think that speaks highly of Mr. Thurmond's record and the things that he's done for this county. So I just wanted to personally thank him for his record of public service in DeKalb County. I do want to give my Smokey the Bear speech. Get your flu shots. Go vote. Last day of early voting is Friday. You can vote tomorrow and Friday. Please go early vote. Please, 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 I'm begging you, go early vote. It's easy. You can go to DeCaturishVotes.com. Yes, Hans.
I was going to say last thing on as this public service announcement, we are going to be hit by the remnants of the hurricane
Yes.
tonight. Please, folks, be safe.
Be safe. Yes.
Be safe. Don't be out late if you don't need to be. Listen for where there are where there is siren coverage. Please be listening, and everybody look out for the folks around you.
Definitely that. Thank you for adding that. If you need information on voting, go to DecaturishVotes.com. I hope early voting is still going on tomorrow. I presume it is, even though there will be a hurricane remnants coming through here. Wear your mask. Wear your mask, please. Susanna, you want to?
You can get information on candidates at vote411.org.
Yes.
It's nonpartisan information.
Very good. Very good. I think only you can prevent forest fires is the other thing that I like to say. But in any event, and get your flu shot. I think I might have said that already. Anyway, Mr. Thurmond, thank you so much. To our guests, thank you so much. We will be here next Wednesday. I do not know what the topic is, but it'll probably be something election related. So stay tuned for that. And everybody have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
All right.
Mr. Thurmond.